It's peak talking season in college football, and some coaches are saying stuff that makes absolutely zero sense. Welcome to the Nitro Show. I'm Burl.
I'm Street.
And today we are breaking down this nonsense. There's been some strange energy at ACC and Big Ten media days, people just saying ridiculous things. The Big Ten is loading up on NIL, and you know, they've got a good track record of the past few years. And are they the best conference in the land? We'll talk about it. And of course, Texas is just buying up recruiting class. They're not, and they're being really weird about it. And of course, we'll update you on the rest of fall camp and what's ahead on the Nitro Show. So let's get to it. ACC, Big Ten media days, weird takes, strange energy.
Yep. So let's start with the quote that kind of shook up the internet in a storm a little bit. Former Auburn assistant coach, head coach at SMU, Rhett Lashlee, today was trying to make a point. But I think his point, while what he said was true, actually proved nothing. And this is what he said. He said the same 6 schools have won the SEC since 1964. Not a single one different from 1964. That's top heavy. That's not depth. I'm going to stop him right there because, number one, what he said was false. Kentucky was co-champions in 1976, so it's actually 7. There you go. But let's talk a little bit more about it. So the SEC, up until 1992, they only had 10 schools, right? So 6 out of 10, or really 7 out of 10, had won the SEC since 1964. So between 1964 and 1992. And that was days, pre-conference championship game. And since that time, since 1992, since the implementation of the SEC championship, those 6 schools are the only 6 schools that have won the SEC championship. So let's take a look a little further. Let's look at the other teams that are now part of the conference, right? Well, Missouri was added in 2012. They played for the conference championship twice, 2013, 2014. They lost both. That's okay. Texas A&M also joined in 2012. They've never made it to the SEC championship, but when they joined the conference, it was a time when Alabama was on a historical run, like we've never seen in college football before. So the fact that they're not making it to the conference championship didn't suggest that they weren't a good team. Actually, they've been a very good team in that time.
Yeah, and on top of that, Georgia's been on a generational run.
Right, from the other side.
Yeah.
Right. Texas and Oklahoma just joined the conference last year, and already Texas made an appearance in the conference title game. Mississippi State, they've kind of been a bottom feeder for a while. They haven't won the conference since 1941, so since 1964, or in modern days, hasn't changed anything for them. And Vanderbilt is an academic school. They're a founding member of the SEC. They've never won the SEC. As a matter of fact, they haven't won a conference championship since it was the Southern Conference before that.
Georgia Tech and Tulane were in the SEC.
Yeah, I'm not talking about. They weren't in the SEC in 1964.
I know. So, can I talk about the ACC?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so meanwhile, in the ACC, Clemson has won the ACC 8 out of the last 10 years.
Yep. And before that, you know who won the conference like dang near every single year for like 20 years? Florida State.
That's right. And you know who hasn't won it since they've been in it?
SMU?
Miami.
Oh, yeah. Well, Miami too.
But also SMU.
Yeah.
They lost to who? Clemson.
Who? Right. Who? And even if you wanted to talk a little bit about another conference, the Big 12. Well, the Big 12 they've had 10 schools win their championship, but 4 of those aren't even in the conference anymore. And the Big 12 has only existed since the 90s? So to him to say that and try to knock the SEC and say that the SEC is top heavy, that doesn't make much sense to me.
Yeah, I agree. I feel bad for the Big 12, honestly. I heard a stat today. I think it was from Brandon Adams on Dog Nation. Check him out. It said that looking at the blue chip ratio that just came out, the Big 12 doesn't have any teams that qualify for hitting that blue chip ratio where the teams that win national championships have this certain percentage. I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah. But if you think about the schools in the Big 12, right? because after Texas and Oklahoma left,
Oh, I know.
Nebraska left before, like your traditional powers that were in the Big 12 have kind of moved on. Texas A&M, Missouri even recruit well, right? So the schools that are left there in the Big 12 don't have the stellar track record. Now, there is one school that's trying to change that for dang sure, and that's Texas Tech. We'll talk about them buying players later.
Yeah.
But
back to Rhett Lashlee. I mean, what a weird thing to say. And congrats to him. It proves nothing.
Yeah. Well, especially from a guy that spent a lot of time in the SEC. Like he understands.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
He understands the grind. Like
he understands nothing.
Well, and he was at Auburn, right? I mean, he was at one of those schools that has won the conference championship. So I don't get it.
And then you got Indiana coach Kurt Cignetti, and Indiana's canceling home and home with Virginia so that they can follow the SEC model. What the hell does that mean?
Well, this is part of the continuing fight that's going on between the SEC and the Big Ten. Obviously, SEC had media days last week. Big Ten's got media days this week. Whereas the SEC, stuck to its guns that we're happy with our 8 games. The Big Ten is doubling down on that. The SEC needs that 9th conference game, or we're not supporting anything. We're not supporting that 5-11 model they want. And it seems like all of the Big Ten media speak now is about, the SEC needs that 9th game to make things fair. Right? So Kurt Cignetti. Let's talk a little bit about Kurt Cignetti. He likes to talk.
He does like to talk.
He came to Indiana last year and he talked a bunch of trash. He came from James Madison, very successful. Went there at Indiana. They had their best year in school history. Now, let's point out that they only played one ranked team all year and they got smoked. And then they played a ranked team in the playoffs and they got smoked. So it was a great year, but when they played a good team.
And that was also after Kirk Cignetti goes on College Game Day and says, all we do is kick top 25 teams' ass.
Right.
Or something like that. Something dumb like that.
Yeah. And so then this whole thing about, we're following the SEC model. We're just going to schedule, we've got our 9 conference games, so we're going to schedule as weak teams as we possibly can. The SEC, they don't schedule anybody. They just have these cupcakes and look at all these FCS schools on their schedule. Now, I want to point out that, yeah, there are some schools in the SEC that like to pad their schedule. Ole Miss. But there are some schools that really do try to schedule hard games. And, oh, by the way, there are some schools that have out-of-conference Power 5 games every year. So essentially, they have a 9th game against a Power Conference team anyway. Now, there are very few teams in the Big Ten right now who are going out of their way to schedule a 10th Power Conference game. Let's contrast that a little bit with the University of Georgia, right? I saw multiple times people throw up, oh, look at Georgia's pathetic out-of-conference schedule this year that starts with Marshall. Why are we playing Marshall in week 1, bro?
Didn't Ohio State or UCLA cancel one of them?
UCLA canceled. Georgia was set to open the season at the Rose Bowl against UCLA. When UCLA joined who? The Big Ten. They asked us to cancel the series. Now, Georgia obliged and canceled the series, but it was late. We had to find somebody who was available. Years after we opened the season playing Oregon, we opened, playing Clemson. We've played these tough games to open the season. We were left, and Marshall was open. So that's who we got. So this year, we have Georgia Tech and we have 3 scrubs. That's how it is.
But on top of that, going back to what you said last week, Georgia still has the 8th toughest schedule in the country, which is only the 8th toughest schedule in the SEC.
Right. So, but let's look even further in the future, right? So this year, Georgia was supposed to have 2 Power 5 out-of-conference games, which is what for most of the time we've been doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at the future. Because if you want to talk about a team that is scheduling up, that's Georgia.
In the year 2000.
26, okay? So, of course, we have Georgia Tech. We also have Louisville. 2027, we have Florida State, Louisville, and Georgia Tech. So we're playing 3 ACC schools. In 2028, we have Florida State and Georgia Tech. Then In 29, we have Clemson and Georgia Tech. And then this is the kicker, 2030. So, of course, we expect the Georgia Tech game will happen. Georgia also has Clemson and Ohio State on the schedule in 2030. Now, keep in mind that Georgia also had some future out-of-conference games scheduled with Texas and Oklahoma that were canceled when they joined the conference.
Right. Do you notice the trend here with the teams that are actually scheduling these out-of-conference games? Only one of the teams in that list you gave are from the Big Ten.
Right.
They're all from the ACC.
It's Ohio State, right? Ohio State is the one that has the balls to do it. They're playing Texas to open the year.
They do. They absolutely do.
Yep.
And so does Michigan. I mean, Michigan does it too. But I mean, look at what the ACC is doing. If anybody has a gripe about scheduling, it should be the ACC because they're scheduling really good out of conference.
Right. Clemson does it every year. Clemson has somebody on their schedule every single year, and they play South Carolina every year. They're not afraid. Florida State has Florida. They're scheduling people almost every year. They're not afraid. Miami plays Florida, Notre Dame. They're not afraid. So why is the Big Ten better than the ACC?
Yeah, why does the rules only apply when it's convenient to them?
Right. And I think in the SEC, I think right now in the future, I think the SEC is going to have a requirement that you have at least one, right? So essentially they're going to have that anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's a stupid conversation to have. The Big Ten keeps trying to cut the SEC down. If they don't want to get together on the playoff format, then it's like Greg Sankey said, we'll roll with the 12-game playoff. Maybe it needs to sit for a few years. We didn't need to change it after 2 years.
It didn't need to go to 12.
It didn't need to be, but it is.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. And I think a lot of the argument from outside of the SEC is that late in the season, the SEC typically has that 1 or 2 weeks where it's a bunch of FCS teams or cupcake games. And it's like they forget the beginning of the season completely because you're only playing these cupcake games later in the year because you opened with a big game to begin the year.
The SEC plays conference games week 1 and week 2. Not as many week 1, but definitely week 2. You know, it used to be that they didn't start the SEC schedule till typically a little bit later because the U.S. Open used to be on CBS, and so they didn't start the CBS game. But now they don't have that requirement. The SEC starts playing conference games first, second week. You look up at the Big Ten, for example, they go play their 3 out-of-conference games first 3 weeks. So almost everybody in the conference starts off 3-0 and is looking great, you know?
Yeah. No, I hear you. Hey, if you're enjoying this content, give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and give us your take on what these coaches are saying. What do you agree with them? Do you disagree with them? Do you agree with us? Do you think we're idiots? Just put it in the comments. We want to hear your opinions. We know what it's probably going to be, but yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe. And on the topic of the Big Ten, Colin Cowherd had a big pronouncement this week, basically just saying that the Big Ten is the best conference in college football. And he gave a lot of good, valid reasons why.
Yeah. I mean, he suggests that they've taken over in this NIL era a lot because of NIL money, but that NIL money has also seen a shift in the teams. He said, back in the 2000s, the early 2000s, the 10s or whatever, the SEC always seemed to have bigger athletes, faster athletes. The joke used to be SEC speed kills, right? That the Big Ten just wasn't good enough to keep up with the SEC. But as you've seen NIL and you've seen the transfer portal and stuff in the last few years, these Big Ten teams, even the ones that haven't always beat the SEC, they're competing. They look better on the field. They look bigger. And he says, if you look at where the Big Ten money comes from, the Big Ten is made up of large cities. They've got Detroit, Chicago, Los Angeles, New York. They have these big cities that are the center of things like Hollywood, technology,
Yeah. Well, I mean,
finance.
even look at the state of Ohio. I mean, you have two NFL markets there already. So, I mean,
The other difference between the Big Ten and the SEC is that the Big Ten schools overall are much larger schools with much larger fan bases. Penn State has the largest fan base, alumni fan base in the country. Ohio State is huge. Michigan is huge. UCLA is huge. These are four of the biggest colleges in the country with huge fan bases to give money. And so, A, you have more alumni, and B, you have a lot more, rich industry. He joked that, well, you look across the SEC country, there's a lot of car dealerships, but car dealerships are operating on a margin. They don't have tons of extra money, not compared to finance. I would say the only exception to that is the oil companies, and that's what you're seeing. That's your Texas and Texas A&M. They can compete, and they're throwing their money around. We'll talk about them in a minute, but in some ways, I don't think he's wrong, right?
no, he's not wrong. I mean, we even talked about this months ago, saying, okay, if you look at the past couple of years, the Big Ten has really made a huge leap. I mean, they've won the last two national championships, and it wasn't really even close. I mean, Ohio State just beat the crap out of everybody in the playoffs once they got their nose rubbed in the dirt by Michigan. But we're seeing talent leave SEC schools to go to Big Ten schools. And, talk about top heavy. The Big Ten is top heavy. Super top heavy.
and part of the whole argument to not make things as top heavy was supposed to be, revenue sharing and everything going on with that. And initially, as of last week, the CSE was taking a hard line, saying they weren't approving NIL deals based with collectives because they were saying collectives weren't valid business reasons. Just being on a football team isn't a reason for somebody to pay you to represent you. You needed a product. Well, the House lawyers lawyered up. And just a few minutes ago, Ross Dellinger released a statement that says that they are revising how they are looking at collectives, that they have reached a deal with the power conferences and the NCAA officials that will alter the CSC relating to how NIL collectives pay athletes. The CSC is expected to treat collectives in a similar fashion as other businesses. So it was supposed to be that, hey, collectives were going to go away. The schools were going to use revenue sharing to pay out of their pocket. And then players could use supplemental NIL deals. Because before, obviously, there was no revenue sharing. All of it was collectives. And so it was just who could raise the money in collective and pay off the players. Well, that was hopefully going away. Now it doesn't look like it. Collectives are back in business. If they are back as valid business reasons and they can run stuff through NIL Go, well, then does the salary cap or whatever really exist anymore?
How is a collective a business?
It's
if anything, it's more of a charity.
Right. Well, it's essentially, it's a fundraising arm,
Yeah, no, it's exactly what it is.
So
are they going to get special tax status because they're technically not making a profit on anything? They're raising money and just paying it right out to players.
Right. So I don't know. This seems like a big deal to me because it seems like the revenue sharing thing, the leveling the playing field that lots of people talked about, that's back out the door. So with this, outside of, the oil money at Texas and Texas A&M, is the SEC in trouble? Even our traditional powers, Georgia, Bama, Florida, I think we might be.
We might, but at the same time, those are still big brands. Georgia is in a good spot because the state of Georgia is very prosperous. I mean, you have Atlanta. And granted, Atlanta is a transient city full of all kinds of different college football fans. I mean, it is the capital of college football. So Georgia's the number one thing in the state of Georgia. The same thing can be said for all these other SEC schools. But you've got a solid population that is dedicated to these teams. And you got to factor in the amount of NFL players that Georgia is producing. You got to think that some of that is going to roll down to the program.
You would think so, but as more and more players are choosing colleges for monetary reasons, it's not so much about what state you grew up in. It's not so much about, I grew up wanting to play for Florida. I grew up wanting to play for South Carolina because that's who my parents rooted for. And that's, that was the team that was on television and got the coverage. So maybe you would hope maybe right now, while there's all those alumni, maybe, but in the future, I think you're going to have even less and less, especially look at the guys who transfer. They go to 4 or 5 schools. Do they owe any allegiance? Like, they don't care. No, they were just there to get paid.
Those guys don't at all. But, I mean, Atlanta is the 6th largest market in the U.S. I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at. So if you look at each state as like its own market, so I'm putting my business hat on if I'm running a collective, and, I'm going to segment these things down as much as I can so that we can get as much promotion as available. Georgia's in a good spot. Obviously, Texas is going to be fine. If anybody's going to benefit, it's going to be A&M.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Texas. Texas has had a big week in the recruiting world, and that's before this news broke about collectives. So Texas has picked up commitments from 3 5-star players in the last week. And the interesting thing is that these were all guys with heavy, heavy Georgia ties. And that's hard for Georgia fans to swallow. Obviously, they picked up Tyler Atkinson from Grayson High School. Georgia was his first offer. They offered him in 8th grade. Like, they've been on that relationship since day one. He's made so many trips to Georgia, so many trips to Athens. Day one-ish. And then he committed to Texas. Now, we talked a little bit about that last week. That might not necessarily been about money. It might have been a lot about depth chart too. But yeah, rumors are they were still the highest bidder. So, of course, JJ Johnson was committed to Georgia for like 2 weeks, and then he flipped to Texas the same day that Tyler Atkinson committed. Well, that was a money thing, clearly. And then Derek Cooper, running back, committed. Derek Cooper was committed to Georgia at one point for a short period of time, real early in his recruitment. But here's the kicker, and here's why some people are kind of up in arms a little bit about Texas. He made 6 visits to Georgia. He made even more visits to Miami. He never took an official visit to Texas. He just committed there. And he said all this stuff about, I felt comfortable there. And people are like, you never went.
You didn't even go.
Right.
Well, he didn't have an official visit.
He might have had. Right. But he took official visits to like everybody else in his list. And he had visited other schools many more times than he had visited there. And I said, Georgia was on him early. He committed to Georgia at one time. So these are hard recruiting battles that Georgia is losing, and money is a big factor. Now, some people are mad, right? Some people are like, oh God, let me get this straight. We are Georgia fans. I'm not really mad about any of these. You know why? Because this is the name of the game. You're allowed to pay players. What I think is dumb and frustrating is Steve Sarkisian coming out and other people involved in their program coming out and trying to play like they don't offer NIL and that's not a big deal. They clearly are. They are in the state of Texas. They have oil money and they have the ability to do it. And clearly they're doing it. So why don't you own it?
real. I mean, he stood up in front of the SEC media days saying, "Oh, we don't talk about NIL. We talk about all these other things." And then
he said we don't have the NIL offerings to offer these kids when they show up on our campus.
Yeah, but as soon as they show up, you get a line of Lambos. You walk out on the field, you get a line of Lambos.
Right.
Come on,
there's
man.
enough evidence to know between the Lamborghini stunt, the Justice Terry situation last year, where Justice Terry said, "Yeah, I wasn't going to Texas. They gave me the best money. It was a business decision." And that's okay. So Georgia fans, SEC fans who are mad at Texas, why are you mad at them? They're doing what is in the rules, and you know what? They're going to keep doing it because at least maybe there was a salary cap before, and those gloves are going to be off if they can push money through collectives. So this may be the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, I was asking this as soon as all the news dropped. I was thinking, okay, I think I was texting you. Is there something that is out there that tracks the college football, or I guess college sports salary cap? Because that cap is for all sports, not just football. And I found like one estimation site, but not really great. But if you think about it, like, each player wanted close to $1 million a year. So that's $3 million for 3 recruits for just the first year. And then you got to expect it to go up each year. So, I mean, the salary cap is just pretty much gone out the window. It's done.
Right. Especially with the news today. So, but here's the thing. Some people are saying, well, let's just give up. Going forward, it's just going to be whoever buys the championships, right? Well, we'll see how it works. Texas Tech is trying that right now. They've been open about it. They are trying to buy championships. With the gloves off and the protection off, we'll see. But if you remember, just a few years ago, there was another team who tried to buy a championship in recruiting, and it all fell apart real quick. And that was Texas A&M.
Mm-hmm.
They bought the best recruiting class that had ever been bought. It had like 7 or 8 5-star players in it, number 1 class in the country. 2 years later, like over half of those players were gone and their coach was fired. So, yes, buying up talent, it may work. And that was part of what Texas kind of got defensive about. They said, one person had said they're not going to spend money on high-priced players. Another person said, well, they're not going to spend money on high-priced players who aren't going to make an immediate impact. Okay. Are you expecting these guys to all come in and play and make impact? Ohio State did it last year and it worked. Ole Miss did it last year and it worked. So if you're going to spend money on players, expect them to come in and play and it works, then your strategy is good. But
the reason it worked at Ohio State and Ole Miss is because they already had a good talent base. They already had a good base of recruits. They just added the cherries on top that what they were missing from the year before.
And Texas does. So Texas recruits well.
Yeah,
and they have talent. So I would say that this is them taking a shot in the short term to try to really build, to try to supplement with young players. Because if you're paying all these guys top money to come in, and let's say it's successful and you win a championship the first year, how many of those guys are going to jump in the portal if they played as freshmen or sophomores? They've done what their goal was, to come win a championship. If they played well, they've probably increased their value. Well, the transfer portal's out there. Somebody's going to give them more money.
Yep. And with all these changes basically being thrown out the window, there's nothing to say that they have to honor their contracts.
Absolutely.
Because they're not doing it today.
They won't have to go through the rev share contracts if they can go through collectives.
Exactly. And that means that they don't technically have to go through the transfer portal either. I was thinking more about the kid from Wisconsin who literally told the team, look, I don't have to be in the transfer portal. I can just go to another school.
Yeah, you're right.
As a student.
So money is flowing. Texas is set up nicely. The Big Ten's kind of set up nicely. We'll see where it goes in the next few years. If it's just oil monies and big money, or if your SEC stalwarts, Georgia, Alabama, can figure it out and hang hang in there and continue to develop players, and we will see.
Yeah, and let us know what you think in the comments, and you can hit us up on different social channels. We're at Nitro CFB all over the place now, whether it's X, Twitter, Instagram, the TikTok, I don't know, all these other ones. We're there, but give us a like, give us a follow, subscribe on our channel. It really helps us out. We appreciate you, and we're all college football fans, so let's keep this rolling.
Yep. So, speaking of all this money, it's an interesting news story came out today about a school that wants to get into the money. They're currently one of those ones that are on the outside looking in, and that's Memphis. Memphis is in the, well, as of this week, American Conference, formerly the American Athletic Conference, rebranding itself. Their news came out that they have been trying for a while now to join the Big 12. And today was that they made a big offer somewhere in the range between $200 and $250 million to join the Big 12, and they were turned down. What do you make of this, bro?
You have to pay for friends?
I guess, man. It's kind of like Rush, right?
I mean, wow.
You got to be an alpha beta, man.
$250 million to be part of your conference.
But what does that tell you? If a school like Memphis, okay, I mean, they've been a decent football program, but they don't have national championships. They don't have Heisman Trophy winners. They don't have that kind of pedigree. If they're willing to spend that kind of money to join the Big 12 conference, well, they're not doing that for nothing.
No.
They must be expecting to make that type of money and make it back fast. So if you're talking about those crazy absorbent fees for schools like Florida State and Clemson to potentially leave the ACC, if Memphis is willing to pay that much to join the Big 12,
yeah,
maybe it's not so crazy to think that we're going to see more realignment with some of these big schools with crazy buyouts in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, I could totally see Memphis going to the ACC if Clemson and Florida State bail.
Yeah, I mean, the SEC and the Big Ten are not an option for them. They don't have what it takes right now to be in that conference. So ACC, Big 12 is options.
Plus the SEC has enough Tennessee teams.
Yeah, I think we're good with 2.
I wouldn't go to a game in Memphis anyway.
Nah, least safe city in America, right? One of the other things that comes out of this talking season is the media members at these respective media days get together and they vote on who they think is going to win their conference. And so last week, the SEC started out with its predictions. And who do you think is predicted as their SEC champion, bro?
That's Vandy, right?
You're damn right.
No, it's Texas, of course. They're spending all the money. They already have a lot of talent.
Of note, though, Vandy did receive 2 points for SEC champion.
Yes,
not everybody did, but yeah, Texas is up there at the top.
That had to be Josh Pate.
So you got Texas 96 points, Georgia 44, Bama 29, LSU 20. Your usual suspects, right? LSU is the one.
That's a wide margin.
Yeah. I mean, and LSU getting that kind of respect is interesting. So
I expect LSU to be right there in it at the end.
Yeah. So that's their SEC champions, but that's not their predicted order. So it doesn't necessarily hold the same. All right. So let's take a look at the predicted order that they thought the SEC schools were going to finish. So up there at the top, we've got Texas and Georgia, Bama, LSU, South Carolina. Then we've got Florida at 6, Ole Miss at 7, Texas A&M at 8, all the way down at 9, Tennessee. Man, from the playoffs to 9th in the conference. Woo! That's a big drop.
I mean, does Nico make that big of a difference?
I think it's more Dylan Sampson than Nico, to be quite honest.
Absolutely. That is the correct answer.
Yeah. And I mean, and to a point, right? No matter what Tennessee fans say, Nico was a problem. The Herb Street stuff today about Nico's dad and all that stuff. No matter what you say, even if you had an unhappy Nico, that's a better situation than either a couple of freshmen or a transfer quarterback who didn't go through spring and was originally transferring from Appalachian State to UCLA and is joining your team this summer.
Yeah,
and you got to play Georgia in your first SEC game. Like, it's not a good situation for Tennessee, especially not early in the season.
No, it's not. I mean, they lose their running game. They lose one of the best pass rushers in the SEC. They got a lot of holes to fill.
Yep. After Tennessee,
I could
go ahead.
I could totally see Bama being in there for the 1 or 2 spot at the end of the season. They're loaded with talent, and they got a good coach.
Right. The 1, 2, 3, Texas, Georgia, Bama. I think that's everybody expects to be there at the end. I think most people expect the SEC championship game is going to be out of those 3. Now, it's interesting because Georgia plays them both. And so that could kind of throw a wrench in it, I think. But
yeah, I find it interesting that they have South Carolina ahead of Florida, just with all the talk of Florida.
I mean, I think it's year. I think a lot of it is Lenore Sellers, right? And we'll get to that in a minute.
Absolutely, it is
the conference championship games. They've got arguably the top quarterback coming back, and they've got one of the top defensive players in the league coming back. So, and they have a lot of momentum, right, from the end of the year last year. So, I think that's probably why they're there. And I think there is some question still about DJ Lagway's arm. So, that's probably why you think maybe Florida would be ranked lower in South Carolina. Rounding out, you've got Oklahoma at 10, Auburn at 11, Missouri at 12. Missouri at 12, which is interesting because they may go like 10-2 because their schedule is horrible.
Yeah. Well, and they usually have a strong team too.
Right. Somehow last year and this year, because of how the schedule worked out, they have a very weak overall conference schedule. So they may not be that good, but this is order of finish. I don't think Missouri's going to finish 12th in the conference just based on record.
I don't either. They're the Indiana of the conference.
And then Vanderbilt, Arkansas, Kentucky, Mississippi State. Arkansas, Kentucky, Mississippi State. Those are going to be your bottom 3 teams. I feel pretty confident in saying that.
Yeah. Vandy's going to be way higher. Yeah. They might be 9.
Hey, that's top of the bottom half of the conference, right?
Yeah. I think some of the biggest keys, though, is DJ Lagway. How's he going to do? And Marcel Reed at Texas A&M. What kind of leap are we going to see in his progression this next year? Is it going to be big time and all that talent's going to come through like it did in the LSU game last year? Because if that's the case, if he puts that on the field every week, A&M's going to be a problem.
Yeah, they've got a solid team. So they also released the all-conference teams. Couple of things to note here. Like I mentioned, first-team quarterback is Lenore Sellers. Second-team, Garrett Nussmeier. Third-team's Arch Manning. Guy with exactly like 2 career starts. We'll see what happens. The hype is there. He was the star of media days, right?
He's got the bloodline.
Yep. A lot of your typical faces you expect to see: Ryan Williams, Cam Coleman, Caden Proctor, 2 offensive linemen from Florida. Which, pound that home, Florida, if they can protect Lagway with this offensive line they got, that's where you can see them really be dangerous. Interesting to note that through all of the offensive side of the ball, that there's only 3 Georgia players in there, none of them on the first team. You have Oscar Delp on the second team, Ernest Green and Nate Frazier on the third team. Georgia didn't really shine on the offensive side of the ball in these preseason teams. But on defense and special teams, now that's a different story. If you look at the defensive first team, there's 4 players on there from Georgia: Christian Miller, CJ Allen, KJ Bolden, Dalen Everett. And then special teams, where the entire special teams first team unit is from Georgia.
That's wild. Even the long snapper.
Even the long snapper. You got Thorson at punter, Woodring at place kicker, Bo Gardner at long snapper, and Zachariah Branch at both the return specialist and all-purpose.
Thorson going to be back for the beginning of the season?
Kirby mentioned it at media days. He said he was working his way back. He said he didn't know 100% if he's going to be ready to go, but he said he will be back. He's starting to kick and he's able to play and stuff. So just a matter of time.
Oh, we also got like the number 1 punter coming in too, yeah. Right? So
yeah. So, like I said, who knows what happens with these first team, second team, third team. It's just more stuff for people to talk about.
Oh man, these names on the second team, special teams, these are great. Texas punter Jack Bomeister
and place kicker Trey Smack.
That's hilarious. Long snapper Rocco Underwood. These are great.
Be on the all team names.
Yeah, right up there with General Booty.
Bumper Pool.
The coldest.
The coldest Crawford.
Yeah.
Kool-Aid McKinstry and Bakari Rambo.
Yes. Good stuff.
So just like the SEC made their picks, the Big Ten media had their media predictions came out this week. And the most interesting thing I thought of all of it is they got Penn State at the top ahead of Ohio State.
It is interesting, but it makes all the sense. I mean, they got a lot of talent coming back. And that includes Drew Aller. He's a good quarterback. He's had his bad moments, but most quarterbacks do. I'm not trying to be a Drew Aller apologist or anything, but kid's got talent, and he's got 2 awesome running backs behind him. That helps every quarterback.
Yep, and then Ohio State there at 2, Oregon at 3, Illinois coming in at number 4.
Yeah, that's a little interesting, coming in above Michigan.
They've got a returning starter with a lot of experience in Luke Altmaier. Bielema's done a good job there. They beat South Carolina in their bowl game. They've got some momentum. So I think that's a good spot for them. They're right ahead of Michigan and Indiana. Those teams could flop. And then Iowa, who is always going to be somewhere near the middle of the Big Ten. Never's going to be at the bottom, right? Because they can punt and play defense. But they did improve on offense a little bit last year.
How bad did Oregon get hit with the NFL last year?
I mean, I think they had a lot of people get drafted, but I think they were like the biggest spender in the transfer portal, I think, of all. They brought in a lot of talent in the transfer portal. So
okay.
They were big spenders in the transfer portal.
Yeah, because that kind of shocks me. I would expect Oregon to be ahead of Ohio State, just with how much Ohio State has to replace from last year.
Yeah. I mean, I think you got to remember, Ohio State, they don't play Oregon in the regular season this year, right? So that is a factor there. And then
that does help, yeah.
And then,
and they
Ohio
got the
State
highest blue chip ratio in the country.
Yeah. And then Ohio State, you've got arguably the 2 best players in the country, and people are going to see that. So
it does help when you have a Jeremiah Smith.
Right. And a Caleb Downs. So
because I could play quarterback for Ohio State and just be like, all right, Jeremiah Smith's down there somewhere.
The bottom half of the league is the bottom half of the league,
Purdue.
I guess the real question is Purdue going to win a conference game this year?
Do they play Northwestern?
They do.
Oh. That's going to be circle that on the calendars, y'all.
Yeah. Like I look their conference schedule for in terms of being in the Big Ten, like they play a lot of the Big Ten heavy hitters. Like in this list, I don't think they play that much at the bottom half. Most of their conference schedule is the top half of this Big Ten predictions, except for getting Northwestern. So I think that's their shot. I think their first two out of conference games are like scrub teams, so maybe they win 2 games, but
I wonder if the opposite is true for the teams at the top. All their games are against the teams at the bottom.
it may be.
We'll look into that. We'll look into that for sure.
Moving on from talking season, we had some kind of feel good stories come out here in the last couple of days. So first is the interesting case of Monte Harrison. Earl, does Monte Harrison, does that name ring a bell?
Monte Harrison. I've known a few Montes in my life, but not a Harrison.
So Monte Harrison spent 10 years as a professional baseball player. He was a second-round draft pick in 2014 by the Brewers. And at the time, he was also a 4-star receiver who committed to Nebraska, ultimately went to go play minor league baseball, kind of rose up their farm system. And then he was part of a huge deal. He was the key piece in the trade that sent Christian Yelich from the Marlins to the Brewers. Yelich would go on to win National League MVP. It was during that time when the Marlins were selling off all these great players that they had, JT Realmuto, Marcell Ozuna. And so he went and he was part of that trade. He eventually made the majors with the Marlins, but he never really found success. But he stuck around in the minors, a little bit in the majors for 10 years. And then he decided to give up baseball and go back to school. So in 2024, last year, he joined Arkansas as a walk-on wide receiver. Played mostly on special teams, had 2 catches for the whole season. But now here coming into the 2025 season, he's second on their depth chart at X receiver.
So he's got a lot of life experience.
He's probably got a lot of miles on those legs too.
Absolutely. So how old is this guy?
He's 30 years old. So he'll be 30 years old this fall.
Older than Chris Winkie.
Right. So that's immediately what I thought of. When I read this story, I'm like, yeah, there's been some players who have gone the baseball route full time and then gone back to school. And I got to thinking, I was like, well, who are we thinking about? Well, obviously the first one comes to mind because he was there when I was in school, was Quincy Carter. He was committed to Georgia Tech out of Southwest DeKalb, went and played in the Cubs system for 6 years or whatever, came back and, ended up being for the better part of a 3-year starter at Georgia, had, little success in the NFL, but, decent, okay career, whatever. Had some problems, but we won't get into that. Then there's obviously the one you brought up, Chris Winkie, who won the Heisman Trophy at like age 29, right?
He was almost 30.
Yeah. I don't know if it was 29. I just guessed, but I know he went on to play in the NFL some after winning the Heisman Trophy. So he was clearly the most successful of these guys. And then the last one was Brandon Weeden at Oklahoma State a few years ago. Was record-setting numbers in their offense when they were really, really humming a few years ago, and then has bounced around in the NFL. So I just thought it's a cool story. That is something to keep an eye on as a 30-year-old sophomore walk-on, but he's moved up to second on the depth chart, so maybe he gets a chance.
So is this going to be more closer to the movie Old School or Back to School?
I don't know. or Necessary Roughness, right? where the guy never played.
Oh,
To
yes.
play quarterback.
Yes. Yes. Oh, that was a good pull. That was a good pull.
That's a great movie. You can go back
It's
and
so
watch that
good.
one.
So good.
It's so funny because that came out like the same year as the program. And so you had the program that was the most serious college football movie ever. And then you had
But
Necessarus,
it's
which was the
not.
most, but, and then you had the most unserious college football movie.
Which was probably a little bit more serious than the program.
Especially the fight at the bar.
Oh my gosh. I love the program. It's just so ridiculous. It's
Right.
it's awesome. Love it.
Yep. And then today, another good story that came out today, or a happy story, right? A couple of notable NFL players announced their retirements today. So the first one was Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger, one of the funnest college football players I think I ever saw. Right? It's like guy playing defensive back, punt returner, was scoring touchdowns, was making plays, all the at the time, all the memes, the Honey Badger,
Oh yeah.
video and all
It
that
was so
stuff.
good. Honey
He
Badger
was
don't
just
care.
he was just a great player. But what I remember most about Tyrann Mathieu is the 2011 SEC championship game. Georgia playing that LSU team that came in that was undefeated, that had beat that crazy Alabama team, that Alabama ended up shutting them out in the national championship game. But do you remember what happened in the first half of that game?
My memory sucks.
So I was there. Georgia was dominating. As a matter of fact, LSU didn't have a single first down in the first half of that game. But Georgia had made a couple of mistakes. And so they had failed to capitalize on really taking advantage. And I think they were only up like 10-0. But right near the end of the first half, Georgia was forced to punt. And who's back there to receive that punt?
Old Honey Badger.
And the Honey Badger took that thing back to the house. And LSU was off to the races. From no first downs in the first half, I think the final score was, 42-10 or 42-13. Like, they just destroyed Georgia from that point on. It totally turned all the momentum. So that's forever my memory of Tyrann Mathieu.
That's a good one. I mean, not for us, but as a player, that's awesome.
Right. And then another NFL announcement, not quite as a long or, glamorous career, but a guy who was important to Georgia, and that's Lorenzo Carter. Spent the last few years with the Falcons. He'd signed with the Titans, told them today that he was going to retire. When he came to Georgia, he was this huge recruit out of Norcross, 5-star player, talked about so much, had a decent career in Athens. I wouldn't say that he blew everybody away like the expectations were, right?
Yeah.
But I think he'll be remembered more for two things than anything else. Number one, he was part of that group of the Senior Four. Kirby's second season in Athens, when 4 players came together who all could have went to the NFL and decided, nah, we're going to come back. So that was Carter, Sony Michel, Nick Chubb, and Davin Bellamy. And those guys came back for their senior years and really helped solidify a team that was building under Kirby Smart in his second year. And then, more importantly, he'll ever hold a place in the overtime of that Rose Bowl game. He blocked the field goal that set up Georgia to ultimately get the win on Sony Michel's touchdown. But the thing was, Georgia felt pretty good because they didn't even have to score a touchdown there. They just had to score. And Rodrigo Blankenship was one of the best kickers in the country. He had already hit a 55-yarder in the game. So his block, even though, yeah, we remember the Sony play, his block kind of really won the game.
That was the greatest game I've ever seen.
Yeah.
To this day.
So toast to Lorenzo Carter, a local guy from the Atlanta area, and hope he enjoys his retirement. Hope he comes back, maybe gives some money to the old Bulldogs to help get us some more players.
Throw it in the collective. It's got tax exemptions now. It's a religion. But yeah, also let us know what your favorite memories are of Honey Badger and Lorenzo Carter. Yeah, and fall camps are here. We got some teams playing at week 0. And Georgia opens up on August 1st.
Yep. So what does that mean for us, right? What does that mean for the Nitro show? Well, obviously, we're getting near to the end of the season. We've got our ongoing series on the 50 greatest Georgia players of the 2000s. That'll wrap up in the next couple of weeks. Check that out. But over the next few weeks, we are going to start getting into our season preview mode, right? So the week of August 4th is going to be our national preview show. We're going to look at conferences across the country and talk about who we think is going to win those conferences, exclusion the SEC, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but talk about who we think is going to win those conferences, how some big games and things are going to play out throughout the year. The next week of August 11th, will be our SEC preview show. That's where we'll talk about how we think the SEC is going to shake out. And then the following week, the week of the 18th, will be our Georgia preview show, where we will talk all things Georgia. So in the national preview, obviously, we'll cover a little bit of Georgia. Probably in the SEC preview, we'll cover a little bit, but we'll really focus on Georgia the week of the 18th. Also, in that Georgia preview show, we'll cover the college football playoff. So we'll kind of, in the weeks before, we'll talk about how the season itself, the regular season's going to go. Then we'll talk a little bit about what we think might happen in the playoffs. And then the week of the 25th, week 0 actually happens that weekend. So the week of the 25th, there's a few games. We may talk about it, and then we'll get you right into week 1.
Yeah, and I guess on a programming note, are we going to start streaming live on Sundays?
We might. I think we're going to record Sundays, so we might go live. That definitely could be an option.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. All right. Well, once again, thanks for hanging with us. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. But until next time, I'm Street.
I'm Burl.
Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.